Hey, today's daf is Metzia daf Chabez, and we are in the middle of the sugya of Yiyah Shaloi Medas. What's that all about? So, if you remember from your fifth grade, sixth grade, um, Yiyah Shaloi Medas means a man. Let's say at 8 o'clock. We're going to give you the example. He's driving on a wagon. You can see it on the picture over here, and he's driving on a wagon, and all of a sudden, something drops from his wagon. And at 8, he doesn't know, let's say a bundle dropped from his wagon. And there's no simon on that bundle. Key word is there is no simon on that thing that dropped from his wagon. At 8:05, right away, somebody picked it up, whether it's money or it could be a little anything that doesn't have a simon. Well, that's called, when he's going to get to his destination, the owner is going to say, oh, some dropped. Okay, I'm a yayish on it. Right? So he's going to miyayish on this thing when he gets to his destination. But right now, when this person picked it up, the owner did not give up. He doesn't know that he lost it. So there was a machloikis we just learned yesterday. We're just starting on the top of the page of Chaf Aleph Amid Beis. Abaya said, Yish loy medas. If Yish and the owner does not know about it, that he does not know, but we know that eventually when he picks it up, he's going to be a Yayish. Abaya says that's not called Yish. That's not good enough. And therefore, the person that picks it up is obligated to find the owner. He can't keep it. And if there is no simon, that's what, so what? He'll have to hold it forever. Rava says it's a yish. Why? Because we know when that owner gets to his destination, realizes he dropped something without a simon, he's not going to be able to retrieve it, so he's going to be yayish. So it's a retroactive yish. And Rava says that will be a yish, which will allow the finder to keep the item. Okay, we're on the bottom of Chafalef and Beis. Toshma coming here. Haganav Shenotel Mezeb and Aslan Zeh. Haganav steals from one person and is a Robin Hood, gives to somebody else. Chen Gazlan and Mugger. Shenotel Mezeb took a chain, let's say a gold somebody, and Aslan Zeh, and gave it to somebody else. Let's go over here. The Chain HaYardain. The Yardain is the Jordan River overflowed. Okay, let's say the Jordan River overflowed, and what happened was Shenotel Mezeh took an item, let's say a lawn chair, from one person, V'Nosel Mezeh gave it to somebody else. So again, all these things happen. Whatever is taken is taken. Whatever is taken is taken. Whatever is taken is taken. And and whatever is given is given. Whatever you take is taken. So the Gemara asks a question. The Gemara says like this: Bishlama Gazlin the Yardain the Chachazaluhu Umiyayish. Gazlin, the guy that lost his item, he sees who stole the item right then and there, and the Jordan that overflowed and transferred it to somebody else. He sees, and right away he sees that the item was stolen from him or is flooded away from him. So he right away gives up hope. So therefore, the finder can keep it, right? If someone steals at night, did the guy and he steals at night, and then and then an hour later gives it to somebody else. The guy that the original owner of who it was stolen from did not know anything about of anything that it was stolen. So therefore, it didn't know that it was stolen, and yet the other person that received it can keep it. So how does that square off? And says the Gemara, that how does that square off with what Abaya says? Abaya says loy haviyish. Answers the Gemara, Kirmara Papa, Belistim Mizuyan, that we're talking about. A ganav doesn't mean a ganav that steals at night. Nobody knows. It's talking about an armed robber. So the guy who was a victim knows right away what was stolen from him and gave up hope right then and there. So the Gemara says, "Yihachi hainu Gazlan." Isn't that the same case of Gazlan? Gazlan and a list of Mizuyim, pretty much the same thing. Answers the Gemara, Trey Gavne Gazlan. There are two types of Gazlan. One is an unarmed, let's say, an unarmed Gazlan, and one is an armed Gazlan. But albeit they do know the person that got it stolen from knows exactly at the time that it was stolen, and therefore he gave up hope. So therefore the one that eventually has it is allowed to keep it. Toshma, coming here. Shotaf nohar karev eitzav avanav nesanam b'soich sodei chaveira. If a river flooded and the wood and the stones and it fell into somebody else's field, hare elu shaloi, it's his. B'nei shinis yaoshu habaylim, because the Bailim gave up hope. The guy Bailim gave up hope. So the question is, Tama dinis yaoshu habaylim. It's only because the Bailim gave up hope. But if it was anonymous, in other words, if it was something else that we don't know that the Bailim lost it, the one that finds it it's not the one that finds it. So this is a kasha against Rava. Rava said that Yish Shaloi Midas is Yish. And here we have a flood that flooded everything away. The guy that's lucky enough to have all these items, the wood and the stone fall into his field, he allowed to keep it. But if he only because we know for a fact that he sees the flood and he's giving up hope on all his items. But if we don't know if he gave up hope, you're not allowed to keep it. This is a question against Rava, who said Yish Alay Midas is Yish. Answers the Gemara, Hachaba. Here we're talking about Kisha Yocha Lahatzil. What are you talking about? That it's talking about it's something that has a siman, that you could give a siman and take it. Oh, so there he's moida that you have to return it. You have to return it. Says the Gemara, Hachi, if that's the case, Ema Sefer. Let's look at the end of the brisa. Im hoya ba'alim ratfim achreim chayev lahachzir. If the owners was running after it, so he wants to retrieve it, then you have to return it. But if the whole brisa is talking about that the bailim could retrieve it, and he won't get it today, he'll come back tomorrow to get it. Like he knows where his item went. So if we're talking about an item that the guy knows he can get it back, so he's not miyayish, my ir yimiratfin. Why? What's the difference if he's running after it? Only then we say that you're chayiv to return it. You're chayiv to return it. If it's something that he'll be able to pick up the next day, it doesn't matter that he's running after it night now. Answers the Gemara, I feel ein rad for nami. Answers the Gemara, hacha b'mayaskinin. Here we're talking about b'yochoylin lahatzel ayedei had chak. If he doesn't rush to get it, then probably he's not going to get it. Why? Maybe tomorrow there's going to be looters that are going to grab it. Therefore, if he's not running after it, it shows that he was mafkarit because he knew about it and he was matzlit. If he's not running about ayusha miyayish, he is miyayish. So the point of the Gemara is always showing that you want to compare it. You're questioning a brisa against Abaya or Rava, and because the brisa seems to be talking about something where the guy doesn't know it was stolen, and we're always saying, oh no, the brisa is talking about that the person does know it was stolen, and so it doesn't enter the machlekes between Abaya and Rava. Now we go off to another case, okay? Ketzad Tashma, we're talking about Truma over here. Ketzad Amru HaTorem Shloi Medas Terumase Truma. If you give off Truma and the person that you're giving off Truma doesn't know, you went into somebody else's field and you gave off Truma from his stuff, right? You gave off Truma from his field, okay? So what's the din? How does it work? Man walks into his friend's field and he wants to be a tzaddik. And he took some from produce, the taram shloi b'rshus, and took off truma without permission. If he thinks that the owner would mind, and the owner thinks he's stealing, ain truma say truma. His truma is not truma. The im lav truma say truma. His truma is truma. Umanayin hu yudeya, and how do you know im choishish mishum gezel bim lav? How do you know if the owner minds or not? So the Gemara says, Hare shaba bal habayis umtsa oy. If the owner comes and finds it, and finds him holding on to the truma that he took off to give to a kohen, and he told the guy, you did a nice thing. By the way, I like to give my truma from even nicer stuff that I have. So if he does indeed have nicer produce, so truma say truma, then the person that took truma on his behalf from his mediocre produce, his truma is truma, because we see that the owner doesn't mind. In fact, the owner wanted to give something better to the kohen. But if it's not so, if he has nothing else, then why did he say klach eitzel yafos? He was being sarcastic. He was trying to say, "Oh, you should have taken something better." And obviously, he doesn't have anything better, so he's trying to be sarcastic, and he doesn't want that somebody else should give truma from his own produce on his behalf. So, ain't truma sui truma. Truma is not truma, and it's gezel. So, liktu habailim by sifoilim. Let's say the bailim started, and not only it was satisfied with what this person picked, but actually gave him more truma to add on to what he already took. No matter what, whether the bailim says klach etzu yafos or in these yafos or not yafos, truma, because even if he was joking around, the fact that he did an action that showed that he was so happy with the guy giving truma to the kohen that he took off more and says, give this also to the kohen, so that shows he was satisfied with what the person did without his permission. Now, we see that if the owner is satisfied by what this person did without his permission, right? The guy went into somebody else's field and took off truma without being asked to do so. And then the owner says, oh, I liked what you did. So then we say truma se truma. Amai. Why is the truma truma? Be it in the Torah, holayavayada. At the time you took off truma, the guy didn't know. And therefore, you're trying to say retroactively, by the bailam being satisfied, it becomes truma. But why? According to Abaya, retroactively you don't say. Just like you don't say this idea of retroactive, which means that Abaya said by Yir Shalom Medas, you don't say, oh, when the guy is going to be miyayish, retroactively, the person that found it is allowed to keep it. No, there's no retroactively over here. When the person found it, the person was not miyayish, so he had a din to return it. So, and this Brisa seems to say, since this is a Brisa or Mishnah that seems to say that you do say retroactively, we are concerned retroactively of what the person did, and it affects the truma. Guy went into somebody's field, took truma without permission, and then retroactively we're going to say it's truma. So it answers the Gemara, Tirgama Rava Liba Abaya. Rava responded in Abaya's defense. Really, this is only a question against Abaya. But Rava responded in Abaya's defense. The Shavi Shliach. Here, the owner knows that this person is going to take off truma, right? The Shavi Shliach. The owner knows that he's going to take off truma, and therefore hachinami, and that's why it works. Hachinami mistavra, and this is why it works. If we're talking about somebody just went into somebody's field without permission and then takes off truma, that for sure is not truma. Mi have a truma, say truma. Is truma a truma? Va'atem gamatem amar Rachman l'rabbi shluchachem ma'atem l'datchem av shluchachem l'datchem. There's a special pasuk that says by truma that the only time truma works is only if the owner is aware at the moment the truma is being taken, and that only works with a shliach. So over here, it must be over here. It's not that the person went in without permission. He went in with permission to take off truma. Going to Shav Yeshliach, the owner did make him a messenger to take off truma. V'amalei, and the owner told this person, Zil Troy, go take off truma. V'loy amalei Troy Mahani, but he wasn't a good mishaleach. He wasn't a good delegator. He didn't tell him where he should take off truma from. What should he exactly take? Which produce? Ustami the balabais, most balabais ki troim and beinasu troim. They always take off the middle. They're not giving off the best produce to the kayan. They're giving off the middle quality produce. Vazal he, and this guy went v'tarami yafos, and he took off from better quality. Ubal balabais umtsoy, and the husband and the owner came and found him. Vamalei, and he said klach eitzel yafos. You should have taken even better. So then we see that the owner, if there's better ones that the person, the shliach, could have taken, truma. Bimlav ain't truma, because then he's being sarcastic. So therefore, he wasn't happy with what the guy did. But be that as it may, this is not retroactive, because the owner was aware that truma is being taken from his field. So it does not enter into the concept of yir shaloi medas. Now the Gemara says an interesting story. Ameimar umazurta Ravashi, iklul bistana de Mari bar Isek. They went to the field, right? One of the fields belonging to Mari bar Isek. I see Arisei, his sharecropper Mori Bar Isik his worker came and offered the rabbis tamre, dates, v'rimoine, and pomegranates, ushada kamei, placed it before them so that they could eat. So, and now the owner had no idea that his worker is offering some of the fruits of his fields for the rabbis. Ameima v'Ravashi achli. Ameima v'Ravashi ate because they knew that the owner wouldn't mind that they eat from the produce. Marzutra loy achal. Marzutra did not want to eat. Ada hachi asri Mari Bar Isik. In the meantime, while they were eating, Mari Bar Isik came, Ashkechini, and he found them. V'amalei larise, and he told his worker, Amai loy isis lulurabonam shapirasa. Why didn't you give them better produce? So retroactively, it's not gazela because it turns out the owner was very happy. So Amaluhu Amema Ravashi Mazutra, Amema and Ravashi, who were eating from the produce, knew that this is going to be the reaction of the owner, that he's not going to mind. And so they said to Ravashi Marzutra, Hashta mai amai lo. So now that you heard what the owner said, why don't you eat the fruits with us? But Tanya, we learned in the Brayse, once you see that the owner is satisfied with what the worker did, trumasi truma, then the truma is a truma. So we see that the owner was satisfied with what the worker did, what he offered the rabbis. So why don't you eat marzutra right now with us? So Marzutra explained, Rava said the following: when an owner says to a messenger, or he says to that person, you should have taken the better ones. So we trust that the owner was being real, was being not meaning what he says, because we're dealing with a mitzvah, and he wants to do the mitzvah in the best way possible by giving the kohen from the most quality produce. Aval hacha, but over here, when the owner came, it's possible he said, "Oh, you should have given the rabbis from the best." Maybe mishum kisifu hu da amahacha. Maybe he was just ashamed. He said that, but really he wasn't too happy with what the worker did. Maybe he was having a bad day and he didn't want to give the rabbis anything, but he was too ashamed to say so. So that's why Marzutra had this chumrah of not eating from the produce. Toshima, come in here. We learned before, let's say on an apple, in order for an apple to be mikabel tuma, we know that it has to be in contact with water. One of the waters that it could be in contact is with dew falling from the heaven. If there's dew still on the fruit, and the owner is happy that the water is there, then it qualifies, it makes the fruit susceptible to tumah. Nigvu, but let's say the fruit got dried up, the water got dried up, the dew got dried up. Afal pisha samach, even though retroactively you said, I was happy that the dew was there. We go to Amid Bays. Einan bichiyutan. Then it's not susceptible, and we don't say since now you're happy, so it helps. It helps for before to make the fruit susceptible. Right now it's not here. Time am I? So this is a question against Rava. Time am I? Time am I? La mishum delay amrinim kivin digloy milsa dahasha nichale miyakara michalei. Since we don't know that we don't say this concept, that since now we find out that he's happy about it, we say before he's also happy about it. So, and Rava says that is the concept of Rava. Rava says that when the guy is miyayish later on, we say retroactively when the person found it and picked it up, he was picking up something that we consider it as if the yish happened. And here we don't say that. We don't say once the dew dried up, that's it. And we don't say that the apple is susceptible to tumah. Answers the Gemara says it's different. Shana Hasam, it's different. The Ksiv Kiyite, the pasuk says that you have to actually put the dew on the apple. Achiyite, until you actually put it on. So wait a second. And therefore it's dried up, you didn't put it on. Ihachi Reishinami, when you found the apple and it had dew on it, but you didn't actually put it on. So the Gemara says, Hasan Papa, the reason why it works, it goes according to Rapapa. Rapapa Rami. Rapapa asked a contradiction in the word itself in the pasuk. Siv, the pasuk says kiyite. In order to make a fruit susceptible to tumah, you have to actually put the water on the tumah, on the fruit. The Korean bay, Korean kiyutan, and we say that it was placed there. Haketzat. So does the Torah demand a fruit to be susceptible to tumah that you actually have to put the water there, or is it enough that the water was put there? When it's placed there, it has to be similar as if you put it there. Just like when you put something on the apple, you put it with full intention. Afkiyuta nami ledas. So also when it's placed there, it's also with full intention. In other words, that while it's still there, you agree that it's still there, and then it makes it susceptible to tuma. That's why it works when dew fell on an apple, and you know it's still there, and you say, I'm okay with it, that makes it susceptible to tuma. But again, this does not enter a question against Rava. So now we go to the final question against Rava. Again, Rava's opinion is Yish Shaloi Midas is Yish. We do say something retroactively works. Tashma, the Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shmuel ben Yahid Tzaddik. How do Benayin? Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Shmuel, how do I know an Aveda? Shishat v'nashi mitaris. Let's say the river overflowed and flooded something, and now it's under the ocean. It's under the river. You can't get to it. If something is lost there, everybody can get it, even if it has a siman. So that's the pasuk. If you find his donkey, if you find somebody's clothing, anything that he lost, and you find it, you have to return it. You found it and return it. It's lost from its owner. Anybody could find it. That's called Hashavas Aveda, where the owner lost it, but anybody potentially could find it. But if it's under the ocean, let's say a ship went down, or the water flooded Long Beach, Yatzu Shavudim Mimenu, it's lost from him. The Eina Mitsuya Eitzakal, most people can't get to it. Only a diver can get to it. So that's what the Brisa says. So comes along the Gemara and adds this point. And when you're not allowed to keep something, it's very similar when you are allowed to keep something. When you're allowed to keep something, if it's under the water, right? Mahatera, if something's deep in the ocean, bein the ispai simen, bein the less by simen, even if it has a simen, you find a piece of luggage from the Titanic, whether it has a simen or doesn't have a simen, sure, you're allowed to keep it. Af isura, when you're not allowed to keep it, bein the ispa simen, whether it has a simen. And this is the point. Bein the leispa simen. If it does, even if it doesn't have a simen, as long as the person was not miyayish it, asura, you're still not allowed to keep it. So we see that it doesn't have a siman. It was lost from the item, and the person was not yet miyayish. So asura, you're not allowed to keep it. So to Yofta de Rava, this is a straight up refutation against Rava to Yofta. So the Gemara says this is one of the places that we do not paskin like Rava. The Hilchasa Kavase the Abaya. The halacha is like Abaya b'yal kagam. In 6 places in Shas, we will paskin like Abaya. Now, so therefore, you have to be careful. According to Abaya, if something you don't know for sure that the person was miyayish it, you're not allowed to keep it. Amalei Ravacha brei de Rava Rav Ashi. Since Rava was refuted, let's say dates fly off a tree, and the owner is not aware that dates flew off his tree. How are we allowed to eat it? And this is a story every day that we pick up dates off the floor and eat it, even though the owner does not know that his dates have been thrown out, has been fallen off his tree. So Rav Ashi explained to Ravacha, since there are rodents on the floor, that eat it, as soon as it falls to the floor, it's being eaten by rodents. So from the very beginning, the owner probably says to himself, if anything falls onto the floor, into the Rishus Harabim, I'm a yayishid. So this is a given yish from the very get-go. So the Gemara says, let's say the tree belonged to an orphan who's under bar mitzvah. He can't make yish. So how does that work? And for the Gemara, we don't assume that every piece of a tree in the flowing next to the Rishus Harabim belongs to orphans. Most of them belong to regular owners, and they're miyayish, so it works. So what happens? Let's say we know for sure that it belongs to a yasim, or you know for sure that when it falls to the ground, there are no rodents there. Now, let's say it falls into a gated area. So therefore, we know that the owner probably was not biyayish it. Are you allowed to eat those fruits? So finally, Rav Ashi said, so then asar, then it would be asar. Asira, they're asar. So bottom line, you learned from here, and we'll do another minute or two, but bottom line, you learned from here, yish loy medas, loy have a yish, because we paskin like a baya. Okay? Now, the Gemara will do a little bit further. Krichas b'rishus harabim harei l'shloi. If you find a bundle in rishus harabim, you're allowed to keep it. Amar Rabba. Now Rabba is qualified and said, even if it has a siman on it, let's say it has a certain a siman, like it's painted blue, whatever. So then you're allowed to keep it. Why? Why are you allowed to keep it if it has a siman? Alma. So we see from here, Kasava Rabba holds siman li dares loy have a siman. A siman that's going to get trampled on. It's not a siman, because if it's lying in the Rishus Harabim, it's going to eventually get trampled on. So how could that be a siman? Rava is just the opposite. Loishon, our Mishnah was not talking about Ela B'Dova She'ein by siman that has no siman. If you find a bundle that has no siman on it, then you're allowed to keep it. Aval Dova She'esh by siman, if it has a siman, even if you find it in Rishus Harabim, Chayv L'Hachos, you have to call it out. Chalma Kasavar, so Rava holds simin or asilidaris, a simin that eventually gets trampled on and it's not going to look like a simin. Have a simin, it's still a simin, and you're not allowed to keep it because probably the owner was not miyayish it. Again, it's based on what the thinking of the person that lost it. If a person loses something with a simin, generally he's not miyayish. But if he loses something in Rishus Harabim, and he loses something in the Rishus Harabim, and it can get trampled on, so maybe the owner says, that's not a good simin. Somebody learn it as a separate case. Simin osili doris. If a simin will get trampled on, Rabba Amar loy have a simin. Rabba says this is not a simin, and the guy who lost it gives up hope because he figures that his simin is going to be, trampled on and crushed. Nobody's going to recognize it. Rabba Amar have a simin. Rabba says it's a simin. Okay, we're going to stop right over here. Tanan gets on to another machlekes between Rabba and Rabba. Okay.
Okay, where are we?
Stopped by Tanan. It's now Tanan, a question against Rabba and Rava regarding a simin or asuli dares. A simin that.
Shkaya.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And I get in Shabbos.